Hello, got a minute? We're about to unpack a list of books, some hidden gems, some not so much. Let's find out what the hype, or the hate, is all about.
Here comes the Ministry of Time, and guess what? Maxwell's hot take scored 2033 likes. Let's read it. Billed as a time-toying spy romance by Kirkus, this genre-bending novel reads more like slice of life with speculative elements that, unfortunately, never feel fully developed or satisfying. Set in the near future and narrated by an unnamed main character, we follow a set of, quote, time expats pulled from various points in the past through a time door that the British government has commandeered and is using for some purpose unbeknownst to us. Our protagonist serves as a, quote, aka a glorified government-employed babysitter for one of the 5 expats we meet as he adjusts to the present day after having been extracted from a failing Arctic expedition in the mid-1800s. Most of his characterization comes from the classic fish-out-of-water experiences the time travel genre expounds on. His bafflement over bicycles and pop music serve as most of the punchlines. Told over 10 lengthy chapters, the story, for the most part, follows our MC and Graham, often referred to as 1847, the year of his extraction to the present, in their day-to-day lives, adjusting to modern London. Really doing nothing? Then, in the last 20 to 30%, the story turns into an action spy thriller before abruptly ending. You can probably tell I had some issues with this book from my review so far. Prior to this book's release, it had a huge marketing push, 1,000 plus Goodreads reviews before publication date, massive author support, and some shining praise from other reviewers. So I was excited for this book pitched as a wild ride, and something fun to escape into. Bah! Unfortunately, I think this book was a huge letdown. The saddest part is that it has a ton of potential, but lived up to none of it for me. With better editing, I really think this could have been great. But the pacing, as previously mentioned, was so off. Truly very little happens * in this story. Which is fine if you want to explore themes through more mundane day-to-day moments. The contrast of our MC and her ward could have been used to dive into the themes she lightly touches on already. History, colonialism, gender, etc. Or it could have been more focused on the sci-fi speculative nature of the time travel bits, which didn't get enough explanation to make much sense. Confoundingly, this also had some romance in it, one surprisingly spicy scene, which I suppose could have been its own story, if that is where the author wanted to take it. Instead, the book tries to do all of the above in a short amount of time, and I felt it lacked because of this ambition. On a sentence level, I also found the writing to be extremely awkward and clunky. The author loves a metaphor, and while occasionally they work, many times they make absolutely no sense if you stop and think about it for 1 second. I was a doll, with no more inner intelligence than a bottle of water. Huh? Or, my knees were jumping like a pair of boxed frogs. This style of writing is constant, and perhaps simply because I do not enjoy it, it really started to grate on me after a while. I recognize this is one area of the book that others might simply overlook. I, however, could not. Along with metaphors/similes which abound, there were many strange word choices or phrases that, to me, felt like it was trying really hard to be poetic or profound, when perhaps the simpler word choice would have sufficed. Instead, the prose regularly took me out of the story because of how bizarre it was. All in all, I wish this book had been a bit more focused on doing 1 or 2 things really well. With better editing, this would have been a solid read I'd recommend for those who want something escapist. But instead, it really dragged for me, and by the end, I was ready for it to be over. Ironically, the last 20% or so were the most readable and enjoyable to me.
Now let's move on to I'm starting to worry about this black box of doom. Let's see what McGray-Fume, whose comment received 117 likes, had to say. This was a wild ride, and I had a great time. The story is very original and fast-paced, the characters are colorful and well-written, each one with their own unique voice. There is a lot of dark humor and craziness and it worked really well for me. I did not see the resolution coming and it might have been my least favorite part, but I still loved this book. I listened to the audiobook version and I found the narrator added a lot to my enjoyment.
We now turn to Sky Full of Elephants. Jeremy Garber, whose comment garnered 337 likes, shared the following opinion. I am a straight white middle-class educated cisgender male. I check off every category of privilege possible in the USA of 2024. This book was not written for me, and it made me uncomfortable. I think that's why it was important for me to read it. The Fforde Skyfall of Elephants begins with all the white people in America walking into the sea and drowning. The book centers around Charlie, a former inmate liberated after the event, who is a master of electricity overseeing the transformation of a new United States. He receives a message from his estranged daughter who was living in Wisconsin with her white family, telling him to take her to the South, where some white folks might still be alive. The rest of the story follows Charlie and Sydney as they take electric cars, because nobody drills for gas anymore, into the South, and expose the beauty and the complicated realities of a post-white world. The tough part for white readers, of course, is that this is a utopia predicated on genocide. At some points in the book, Campbell seems to savor that fact, but at his best, the characters in the novel wrestle with that reality in different ways. In this new world, black folks can laugh and dance and sing without fear of violence or reprisal. Campbell even seems to suggest that capitalism and oppression are natural features of white culture, and both have been gleefully abandoned once the white folks are gone. That's the utopian piece, and I can see where Campbell is coming from in his imagination. But it's still an oversimplification that can lead to the very danger and violence that Campbell seems to be against. I give Campbell credit for at points questioning this violence, and for his imagination. This world is a world that I would want to live in without question. The bigger concern is whether I would be allowed to, or whether the utopia requires the death of people like me.
Moving on to the blueprint. The bookish Bree shared her thoughts, and 53 people liked what she had to say. Through 3 timelines, 1801, 2025, I presume, and 2030, we followed 2 women, Henriette and Solène, both connected and unprotected, misguided by white men, with a story that touches my soul. Imagine a world where you are assigned to the person with whom you'll spend the rest of your life based on an algorithm. A debut dystopian novel that showcases a broken system in which racism, misogyny, and the silencing of black women lead to Solène being in a situation where she confuses love with control, not her fault. Solène, your story has my heart. This story will be one I remember. It flowed so well. It's a novel that you will continuously want to go back to if you put it down so you can understand its entirety. The way Rashad writes this one makes 2 things certain. We aren't far from where we came from, and we are so close to something like this happening that is being held in bondage. It's eerie to think about, but not unimaginable, and I think that can be a very tough pill to swallow for some with this one. I loved what I thought the main point of this was, which was that black girls and women are expected to be everything but what they want to be. Expected to be quiet. Never anger easily. Always keep up an appearance. Choose the right thing, but not what's right for them, but everyone around them. What can black girl/woman do for you? It seems to be the approach most take when dealing with one. What do I get out of this interaction with a black girl/woman? What can I take or control? They are often left at the mercy of scrutiny, predators, and dishonesty. This novel brings light to that topic. Solène is alone. Solène needs love. Black girls/women need love. They need patience. Solène's story needed to be told and heard. This book deserves to be read. You may not agree with how it ends, but ask yourself this one question. Did I listen? I would recommend this one to anyone interested in dystopian fiction, with ties to power dynamics, mind control, racism, and slavery. I also recommend pairing this story with audio, because Jonice Abbott-Pratt's voice adds a layer of imagery as always.
Here comes in Ascension, and guess what? Mike's hot take scored 237 likes. Let's read it. Okay, so let's celebrate our tolerance for ambiguity. This ambitious sci-fi story is a possible Booker winner. It's very well crafted, and I didn't enjoy it one bit. I applaud MacInnes for writing an eco-novel that shows how human beings are part of a larger, mysterious and beautiful natural system, It's one of the few Booker entries that at least somehow relate to current political issues. In the world depicted, climate change has accelerated. Enter our protagonist, marine biologist Lee. Growing up in Rotterdam with a violent father who despaired over his job keeping the rising tides at bay, adult Lee first joins a mission that researchers a vent apparently 3 times deeper than the Mariana Trench. Lee specializes in the research of unicellular algae, one of the oldest sources of life. Then, Lee is recruited to join a secret space mission that aims to find out about mysterious irregularities. The algae is supposed to provide food and be part of the intended research. So yes, you need to have a propensity for slow-moving, description-heavy 500-page tomes that dive into the intricacies of marine biology and space travel, and extrapolate the status quo to possible future developments in these fields. I really tried, but the fact that I didn't care about any of the characters, especially the space crew hardly gets any proper character development, made it even harder to plow through page after page of elegiac evocations of scenes and atmosphere. It's not that it's badly done. In fact, MacInnes achieves exactly what he aims to do. It's just that this kind of writing does nothing for me. Endless mundane occurrences on ships and in space, intricate lengthy scene setting, conversations about the hows and whys of detailed scientific endeavors, that's a no from me. We have recurring motifs like immersion, distance and connection. We have light and darkness. The unreliable human apparatus for perception and understanding. It's very well thought out. I also liked the constant idea that in nature, time exists horizontally, so the beginning of life is still happening in various senses. The title of the novel alone underlines the author's cleverness. Lee ascends from diving, she ascends to the sky, there's an idea of religious/spiritual wonder, and the spacecraft is supposed to come down on. In the final part, we hear the perspective of Lee's sister Helena, IMHO, the most interesting character, so needless to say she hardly features, who questions natural scientist Lee on many levels. But I was bored out of my mind. The broad descriptions and the slow pacing, the even temperament of the whole text just drove me nuts. So all in all, I'm not surprised, and not even mad if this wins the Booker. But I can't get behind this novel, purely for reasons of subjective taste.
Let's move forward with Service Model. Natalia's review attracted 585 likes. Here's what she wrote. Adrian Tchaikovsky's is a love child of a very long parable and a philosophy treatise, but written as a riff on quite a few classical authors. The chapter headings give a clue: KR15T, Christie, K4FKR, Kafka, 4WL, Orwell, ADRH5, Borges, and D4NTA, Dante. It's a story of a robot valet on Charles. He used to be a Charles, but the name had to be left with the house as the robot was dismissed from service, who inexplicably murders his master and goes on a purpose-searching mission through a dystopian wasteland of the future society collapse while adamantly maintaining his lack of self-awareness to an unexpected companion met along the way, the delightfully rebellious the Wonk. Tchaikovsky engages in a lot of pointed social commentary with a side of dry humor and considerations on the meaning of free will and justice and purpose in life, combining the earnestly naive outlook of our protagonist with the bleak darkness of the surrounding world, producing a comedic effect that's still very much in a parable style but thankfully very much not a recently popular cozy feel. Tchaikovsky often writes doorstoppers, and it's one of them, but to be honest the book would have benefited from being half of its length. Maybe I'm just partial to Tchaikovsky's novellas because he has them down to an art form, but cutting out a section or two from this one would have streamlined the flow. There was a certain repetitiveness in those sections that after the snappiness of the first part made it drag a bit. On the other hand, however, the slowness added to the allegorical parable feel of the story. But what saved it for me was the audio narration by the author himself. Tchaikovsky is a delightfully good narrator and it's always special for me to hear the book in the author's voice. The particular mix of influences here, KR15T, K4FKR, 4WL, ADRH5 and D4NTA, with biblical allegories and philosophical dialogues and hero's journey, is interesting, and I appreciate that Tchaikovsky is willing to take an experimental risk with it here instead of sticking with the tried and true. The side effect of this stylistic choice is the world-building, which is not airtight but is rather present to make a point, and the point is the journey rather than destination. If you're not expecting it, however, it may take you aback a bit. But this is a story not for the sake of the plot but for the sake of the message, and in Tchaikovsky's hands it's somehow not annoying and a strength rather than the expected weakness. I've seen some comparisons of this book to Murder Bot, but I just don't see it. However, if you've read Suzanne Palmer's Bot 9 stories, you are bound to see some rather lovely similarities. 3.5 stars plus an extra half star for Tchaikovsky's narration. Thanks to NetGalley and Macmillan Audio, Tor Publishing Group for providing me with an audiobook arc in exchange for an honest review.
Now we turn to Baby X. Shelley's book Nook's Comment, which received 271 likes, offers an interesting perspective. This book was pretty good and very unique. I am not a big science fiction fan, but speculative fiction floats my boat, so I thought I'd give this a try, and I am glad I did. What an imagination Kira Peikoff has. Told from multiple points of view, my favorite format, Baby X is about the future of DNA, embryos and science that goes too far. The pacing of the book had me frantically turning pages as I wanted to find out what would happen next. I thought for sure I would be bored to tears with the scientific terminology, but Peikoff kept it interesting and didn't make me feel stupid. She has a master's in bioethics. Not all the characters are likable, but there are ones to cheer for, and I liked getting each person's perspective because I felt like I got to know them from the inside. 3.5 stars is a decent book, and I did enjoy most of it even though I figured out one of the twists. But, towards the finish there is another twist and I didn't see it coming, and I loved the way everything and everyone came together at the end. It did get a bit over the top, but I am going to let it slide because it is speculative. I am going to round up, which I rarely do. Because it was just so damn entertaining, it surprised me, it was a fast, easy read, and I like popcorn thrillers to a certain extent. I ain't mad I read it.
Let's take a look at yours for the taking. Terry Robinson's comment, which got 104 likes, might give us a clue why it stood out. By Gabrielle, Korn is a sapphic and dystopian fiction story. In the year 2050, the effects of climate change have impacted the world to the extent that soon being outside will no longer be safe. The one chance of survival is through and is only assured if your application to join is selected. Can offer safety from the elements within structures the size of large cities, stationed around the globe. The Manhattan site will be directed by billionaire and feminist, Jacqueline Millender, who has innovative ideas on how she envisions her location operating. Jacqueline is quickly realizing her dream for the future. Has a premise that is so out there it's distracting, and yet, at the same time, it's both thought-provoking and improbable. The writing is good and the storytelling is creative, but I had trouble wrapping my head around what's happening because it feels almost too close to watching history repeat itself from the early 20th century. It's always a deal breaker for me in the inability to connect with the characters, and it was glaring here. I didn't feel sorry for, want to share a meal, or have coffee with any of them. The emotional pull towards these characters just wasn't there. Perhaps a bit more character development and a little less plot focus would have made a difference with this. This story is labeled as adult fiction, but you can't fool me. This story reeks of young adult mixed with new adult overtones. The characters are immature, and I wasn't expecting that in this story as it was described in the synopsis. This was an immersion reading experience through the gifted digital reading copy and advanced listening copy. The audiobook is narrated by Jasmine Savoy Brown, whose voicing skills are good. However, either format will deliver a satisfactory experience. I'm an outlier with, as most reviews are positive with high ratings, and I'm glad for this positive support to the author. Dystopian fiction is one of my favorite genres, and I was expecting to love this story, but not every book is for everyone, and this one is definitely not for me. 2.5 star. Thank you to NetGalley, St. Martin's Press, Macmillan Audio, and Gabrielle Korn for a DRC and an ALC of this book through NetGalley. It has been an honor to give my honest and voluntary review.
We now turn to the other valley. The Speculative Shelf, whose comment garnered 183 likes, shared the following opinion. This is a quiet gem of a novel. Scott Alexander Howard takes a unique premise and executes it beautifully, never relying too heavily on his fantastical plot device to convey young Odile's heartfelt story. I loved the exploration of the moral and practical reasons a citizen should and should not be allowed to visit their neighboring valley to the east, 20 years into their future, and to the west,
20 years into their past. A more scrupulous reader might uncover some time travel plot holes here that I tried not to think too hard about. But if you suspend your disbelief and take the story at face value, you'll find a thought-provoking and wistful tale that I, for one, greatly enjoyed. See this review and others at and follow on Twitter.
Here comes Absolution. And guess what? Hank's hot take scored 148 likes. Let's read it. Apparently people thought this review contained too many quotes and flagged this. Whoever you are, I hope you enjoyed the book a bit more than me. I truly enjoyed it, being one of the books I picked up eagerly when I started reading again as an adult. Had me very excited, aided by its gorgeous cover. In 3 parts we are returned to respectively 20 years before the barrier around Area X came down, 18 months before and during the first expedition 1 year after the area was sealed off. The first section, consisting of diary entries being commented upon by Old Jim, the main character of the second section, was definitely my favorite. We have deeply unsettling campfire settings, where music is reflected back from the trees to the scientist, and scenes of rabbits, potentially the same that are sent into Area X turning up, who eat crabs and have living cameras attached to them. There are movies that change at every viewings which seemingly drive people mad. Utterly unique in ideas and seriously foreboding. With a spot called Dead Town. This section made me think most of Annihilation. It is interesting that already 20 years prior to the barrier there were strange events in the Forgotten Coast, including uncannily smart alligators, headed by an especially large one called Tyrant and a human-like apparition dubbed Rogue. Already here there are doubts if the bureaucracy that funded the expedition is not more aware and involved in the strange events. This section of the book felt foreboding and claustrophobic. Very well done in my view, and you start to understand exactly what is meant with the following sentence. The second part of the book focuses on Old Jim, who is sent to the Forgotten Coast by Central High-Up Jack Severance. This section felt more slow-burn spy thriller to me, with Old Jim teaming up reluctantly with Cass, someone initially masquerading like his lost daughter. Initially quite slow, there are clearly elements that don't want any further digging into the area and the rogue. Old Jim and us are brought into contact with things that seem like mental viruses, triggered by certain song lyrics, or mental landmines, detonated by specific controlling words. There is even a Schubert song that seems particularly lethal. This section was enjoyable, certainly when secret rooms which seemingly endless dimensions in their corners and a facility where people are shoved into cylinders made their appearance. There are also overtones of human hubris, flowing from the idea that the power that is starting to manifest in mental programming and temporal anomalies can maybe be controlled. Finally we have about the first expedition into Area X after the barrier came down. This should have been quite intriguing, if not for my strong dislike of the main character and his style of narration. James Lowry says fuck every 2 words and is on drugs, which seems a poor combination with entering a potentially hostile alien-infected zone. Soon shit hits the fan for this group of 24 Earthbound astronauts. Starting off with the protective suits and some people interacting in unexpected manner. Walkie-talkies scream, horrors and boxes are destroyed only to reappear. The lighthouse, essential to, appears differently, if always eerie, to the various expedition members, aligning to some dream images characters in part 1 and 2 of the book saw. There are beaches full of human bones, a cut-in-half destroyer, and there are guns that come alive. I think if their narrator to this section would have been different, that this would have been my favorite section of the book. Now it's sometimes steered dangerously close to. In the end there is even cannibalism. But it is heavily implied that everything experienced by the team members is a reflection of simply an unknowable large force interacting with the world.
In one of the final scenes, Lowry thinks of disturbing a pond with fish and algae as a god, but decides against it. It seems that unfortunately for the expedition, and potentially humanity, that whatever powers Area X has not abstained from intervention, and that this might just be the start of an expansion of a phenomenon that doesn't just empowers nature in bizarre ways, but also influences time. Remnants of the world before Area X seem to have aged by 50 years in 1 year. While already old Jim notes that it seems in certain ways like the future is trying to colonize the past, I was reminded of where we also have a large and unknowable entity trying to interact with humans, inadvertently breaking their minds. The eyes appearing on skin and deep revelatory insights conferred with a loss of humanity reminded me of the last episode of Neon Genesis Evangelion, or The Realm Truth Resides in Full Metal Alchemist. Big anime energy that is rare to find in books. Overall, I liked this book, although parts of the second and third section felt at times like a chore to read. His writing draws you in, and there are plenty of big ideas, if not clear answers and conclusions, to enjoy here.
Next up, Moon of the Turning Leaves. Angela M. dropped a comment that 105 people couldn't help but like, let's see what she said when I finished reading. I was left wanting to know the fate of the characters, so I was glad to see there was a sequel. Evan and Nicole, First Nation people of the Anishinaabe tribe, their family and other families who survived the collapse, have managed to keep on living a decade later in the bush in northern Ontario, Canada, where they moved to after the lights went out at the res. But sources of food are becoming scarce, and it becomes clear that they need to find a new way to survive. A handful of people make the harrowing expedition to see what is south, to find the old homeland before moving the whole community to a place they call home. They encounter adversity, loss, bears, and extremist militia groups who are pretty scary as they are into, quote, some white power shit. Scary because it's relevant now. We never know what caused the power to go out, but it stands as a warning for sure. The adversity is tempered by bravery, hope, resilience, a dedication to their ancestry, friendship, and love. Thanks to my Goodreads friend Jody for bringing it to my attention. Here's her review. I received a copy of this book from William Morrow/HarperCollins through Edelweiss.
All right, let's check out Red Side Story. Here's what Abigail said. Her comment got 93 likes. US finally has a release date. Alas, we have to wait till May 7, 2024, according to PRH site, Soho Press, UK pub date February 6, 2024. Waterstones has it listed a bit earlier, but this is from his site, Ouse pub date February 13, 2024, from publisher Hachette. Update the 11th of January 22 asterisk. From Jasper Fforde's Twitter, submitted first draft of Shades of Grey 2, Red Side Story, this morning. Eddie and Jane, they're back. The Colortocracy, Prefects, Jollity Fair, Tin Men, Angels, Heralds, Fallen Men, Loganberry Jam, Riffraff, Ball Lightning, Mildew, Ford Model TS and the lovely Violet de Mauve. Original post. While we still have an agonizing 2 years to wait for the second Shades of Grey, Fforde says he's doing a standalone prequel about the something that happened coming, eventually. So that will ease the hunger, I suppose. Update. Looks like we can expect a completely unrelated book called set to release in. Presumably this is the super secret standalone, described on his website. Amazon UK description reads, imagine a world where all humans must hibernate through a brutally cold winter, their bodies dangerously close to death as they enter an ultra-low metabolic state of utterly dreamless sleep. All humans, that is, apart from the sleep marshals, a group of officers who diligently watch over the vulnerable sleeping citizens. When John Fugue, a junior sleep marshal, finds himself in the forgotten rural outpost of Sector 12, he hears of a conspiracy. A viral dream is somehow spreading amongst those in the hibernational state, causing paranoia, hallucination and a psychotic episode that can end in murder. When Fugue enters the sleep state himself and wakes 2 months later,
All those who knew about the dream have disappeared and, more disturbingly, Fugue himself can recall parts of the viral dream, a dream that shouldn't be possible. So everything's been pushed back. SOG prequel not expected till 2016 along with the fourth Dragonslayer T_T. Well, his books are good enough to be patient for *U*. Update the 11th of August 16 *. From Jasper Fforde's Twitter, October 19, 2016, writery update. At present, my plans, Early Riser, Dragonslayer 4, as yet untitled novella, Shades of Grey 2, Thursday next date. The agonizing wait continues, but at least there's the last Dragonslayer film to look forward to this Christmas. T*. Update the 2nd of November 18 *. From Jasper Fforde's Twitter, January 19, 2018, just finishing Early Riser now, so we'll have a pub date soon and news of future books. Normal service will be resumed as soon as possible. Early Riser being a standalone novel unrelated to SOG, but hopefully this means we'll be hearing more soon. Update December 17, 18 *. From Jasper Fforde's Twitter, the 11th of September 2018. The next book will not be a next book. The one after the next book is DS4, and the next after that will be SOG 2. Then there will be the next. The next book is a standalone about rabbits. I hope that's clear. In case it's not, 1. Meet the Rabbits. 2. Dragonslayer 4. 3. Shades of Grey 2 ***. 4. Thursday next. If you live in the UK, Fforde's standalone novel, Early Riser, is available now. Those of us in the US can grab it February 12th. From his site, updated 5/18, Meet the Rabbits, sort of, District 9, meets Watership Down. Blatantly unsubtle allegorical novel about rabbits moving in next door. We live in unsubtle times, and this calls for unsubtle books. I should be done with this by the end of June 2018, so hopefully 2019 for publication. Asterisk from his site, updated 5/18, either a prequel that takes place before the something that happened, or we'll just carry on straight after Eddie's marriage. I'm favoring the latter. I'll be working on this in 2019 and I'm not sure how long it will take to write. Update September 23, 20 *. Nearly 2 years ago, Fforde told us his next book would be a book about rabbits, and that book is finally here. The Constant Rabbit is now available in the UK and will be available 9/29 in the USA. Early Riser, another standalone, is also now available if you still pine for your fix of Fforde. On Twitter 10 out of 10, Fforde confirmed his writing schedule is as follows. 1. Dragonslayer 4, Humans v Trolls, aiming for publication late 2021. 2. Shades of Grey 2 aiming for publication 2022. No word on whether this will be a prequel or continuation, JF favors the latter. 3. Thursday next date, Dark Reading Matter. There are no plans for further nursery crime novels at this time.
Let's move forward with Extinction. Peter's review attracted 160 likes. Here's what she wrote. What a fascinating thriller with prehistoric elements. A brutal murder is taking place in a remote area of Colorado. A young couple is killed. Who did it? CBI agent Frankie Cash and the sheriff of the town try to find out. What is the role of Erebus, a company who makes millions with a park featuring de-extinct animals like mammoths? Here we learn a lot about cloning, about Homo sapiens playing Frankenstein and how the past might fight back. No spoilers here. Who is the terrorist group trying to destroy the whole park? What did the scientists do and research in particular? A very intense page-turner with serious questions to ask yourself. A book with a morale. The author did some excellent research and came up with a convincing and totally compelling story. Hats off. Highly recommended.
Time for the Stardust Grail. Let's see why MacInnes' comment, with 247 likes, stood out. An absolute delight of a sci-fi novel? Yes, it's a heist book, but it's also a lot more than that in ways that I'm just going to let you figure out as you read because it's such a fun ride to take. Aftio ba! The pacing in this book is great. I'm in the midst of a gnarly reading slump where it feels like I can barely focus on written words for more than 5 minutes at a time, and still this book managed to break through that and had me hooked very fast with the opening chapters and excited to keep going. The highs and lows and the action and the downtime and the discoveries are all just balanced out really well in this story. The core group of characters are fun and varied and feel real and believable, even the one with all the tentacles, and the way we integrate everyone together in the story is, to repeat myself, paced very well. The action is good, the tension is well timed, there's humor and grief and loss and love and a taste of found family, and more story than the synopsis prepares you for, which is a great way to do a synopsis rather than revealing far too much in an attempt to hook people in. What can I say? I really enjoyed my time with this book. Kitasei has a vision of the future in both of her novels now, set in near future and now set in far future. That does so well at striking tones both pessimistic and optimistic, at finding the good in the bleak, and never leaves you too mired in one over the other. And the way she maintains humanity and culture in these stories, and particularly here in MacInnes, is something I really wish we saw more of. So many sci-fi stories, once they escape the bounds of Earth and go interstellar with other planets and aliens and far-flung adventures, tend to flatten humanity to one homogeneous human culture, often a white, Western sense of culture, among the interstellar community, but Kitasei maintains her character's individuality. Maya may be a spacefaring thief, but she's also a half-Japanese, half-American struggling grad student living between two cultures just on the human side, not to mention her otherworldly travels. It's grand in its physical scale, and yet still feels grounded and relatable and realistic and human. I also really appreciate what this story has to say about colonialism and anthropocentrism, and again, Kitasei strikes a great balance of making the astronomical feel relatable and knowable to the 21st century earthbound human reading the story. In case it wasn't clear, I had a great time with this one. Last bit, for this one is great. The narrator does a great job with the voices and makes some really cool choices in the style for sections I won't get into here. Do recommend if you're an audio reader. I loved this book so much. I asked the author if she'd like to sit down for an interview, and she kindly agreed.
Let's take a look at I Cheerfully Refuse. Canadian Jen's comment, which got 260 likes, might give us a clue why it stood out. I was cheerfully confused for the first third of the story. I wasn't sure of the century, but it's after ours where books and stories are cherished, as is the relationship of Lark and Rainey. But it's also a dark and dismal time. People committing suicide to escape the reality. Then there is the dreaded day which begins a series of events Rainey must run from and leads him to Lake Superior in his sailboat Flower. During this perilous journey, he meets many seasoned folks and misfits along the way, all the while searching for his own ghost. The writing at times soothing and ethereal, at others brutal and bashing. As dark as the story was, the beauty is in this prose. I am now convinced I am a dystopian fan. 4-star. We now turn to The Mercy of Gods. Magret Fume, whose comment garnered 519 likes, shared the following opinion. Everything about this book is incredible. I loved everything about it. It's a very smart, original, and gripping tale, full of unique and touching characters, and the writing is absolutely fantastic. Every page was perfect, and I can't wait for the rest of the series. I never read The Expanse, I just watched the show, so I can't compare, and I went in without any real expectations, mostly because of the blurb. I'm so glad I did. Definitely a future reread.
We now turn to Annie Bot. Emma, whose comment garnered 779 likes, shared the following opinion. The future is scarier than any horror movie less than 3. This is a creepy sci-fi book and also an intense allegory for emotionally abusive relationships and also a damning exploration of misogyny all in one. It's a book about a dystopian future in which men see women as only good for sex, homemaking, or parenting. In other words, our present-day reality. Ch. Reading this unrelentingly icked me out and made me feel grateful for my sentience and freedom. Like when you have a cold and your nose is stuffed and you're like, I'll never forget to appreciate clear nasal passageways ever again.
I enjoyed the fact that this book did not pander or condescend to its audience in its themes, and granted the reader the ability to pick up on what was going on most of the time on their own. Although I did not enjoy the moments when it had our protagonist provide a neat summary of something that had been going on for hundreds of pages, or understand why there was a moment when a random woman was outed as trans, it pulled its punches sometimes and felt overzealous at others, but overall this book was cool and impressive and skin-crawly. In a good way. Bottom line, I hate modern life. Thanks to the publisher for the e-arc.
Here comes the family experiment. And guess what? Niloufer Ozmakik's hot take scored 346 likes. Let's read it. If you want your remaining brain cells to sizzle like charcoal, just flip through the pages of any John Mars book and feel the ground shake under your feet as the smoke of your burning cells fills the air. His works are truly spectacular. Some even more intelligent and mind-bending than episodes of Black Mirror. What's most horrific is that the scenarios described in these books, questioning the revolutionary progression of technology and AI controlling lifestyle, could all become true. If an author can imagine such an ugly truth, then the creators of the technology can too. The one marks the beginning of Mars' mind-bending tech saga, followed by my favorite sci-fi thrillers, Passengers, Minders, and Marriage Act. I recommend starting with these to better understand the family experiment. Some characters, like Cadman and Yu, appeared in Passengers, and there's a storyline about an auto-controlled car accident related to other characters. To piece together the puzzle and get a clearer picture, start with the saga where people find their loved ones via DNA testing, which connects the stories of how the government shapes modern British families with regulations in the Marriage Act. Finally, in this book, we find out how genetics and technology change the way of parenting in the metaverse universe. As the world population soars and economic crises increase, a growing number of people can barely afford to support their families, with some even resorting to illegal means like trafficking their children to pay off debts. In the middle of this crisis, companies find another way to protect the sanctity of family life. Can you imagine having a child called Meta Babies? Pre-ordered children exist only in a virtual world called Metaverse, where parents can pick and choose the age, sex, and design their appearances from eye to hair color, skin tone, body shape, accent, interests, and speed of their growth. Awakening Entertainment Company uses this technology for their latest reality show called Family Experiment, where 6 couples are tasked with looking after children in different phases, from newborns to fully grown up. The AI-based created children are programmed to grow like real children. Their experiences determined by the nurturing they receive from each parent. Viewers can watch every moment the families experience in the metaverse, and one lucky selected viewer can even join them for a limited time to meet the children. The participants will be pushed to the limits with monthly challenges to learn the difficulties of parenting, with virtual black and red hearts on the screen showing the viewers' live responses to their actions and conversations with their children. Of course, there's a big prize at the end, and the decision for the parents to keep their virtual baby or terminate the avatar to raise their own child with financial support for IVF treatments. We are introduced to couples including Rufus and Kitty who left the competition shortly after a tragic event occurred during the live streaming. I can honestly say none of the characters are likable. But of course, there's a reason behind all these irritating character developments that serve the big picture. Woody, a drone pilot, and Tina, a euthanasia nurse in 36, seem like a peaceful couple with their daughter Belle. But they hide something very dangerous in the basement. Is there a person? Are they putting someone there trapped without letting go? Cadman and Yu, a social media influencer in 36, and Gabrielle Macmillan in 26, PA, are the only gay people It seems like their financial inequalities and age differences have turned Cadman into the controlling man in their relationship. And he has leverage that turns Gabrielle into the obedient one. Unfortunately, Cadman acts like their son River is a cash cow by monetizing his milestones in life with influencing business. Dimitri and Zoe Taylor-Georgiou, a couple in their late 40s, already had and lost a son before. Both of them hide something from each other behind closed doors and are threatened by somebody who knows their secrets from the outside world, but who? Selena, a data analyst, and Jaden Wilson, her husband, a personal trainer, both in their early 30s, had hiccups in their marriage because of Jaden's financial secrets. Now they have another chance to be a family. But Selena couldn't relate to their child as much as Jaden did. And a dangerous stalker starts terrorizing their life that may open a can of worms, revealing more truth that may risk their entire relationship. And Hudson Wright, single, 22, raising Alice alone, is the most controversial parent who needs to prove he can shoulder both parents' roles in the family. Interestingly, Hudson is not in the contest for the prize. He has another motivation to raise awareness. But what is it? As the competition continues, the secrets of the contestants start revealing. The tragic incidents keep occurring. And everything will change. From your perspective to the realities and the AI technology that may affect people's lives more than you imagine. Overall, my mind exploded. I only downgraded half a star because after the shocking twist of the book, the aftermath that shows each contestant's lives was too long and lowered the tension of the entire settlement, even though they consisted of other small twists like Easter eggs you found hidden in the grass. I'm still rounding up 4.5 stars to 5 mind-bending stars and raising my glass to the extremely intelligent mind of John Mars. Looking forward to reading his next journey in this heart-throbbing, Gray Cell exploding saga. Many thanks to NetGalley and Harlequin Trade Publishing, Hanover Square Press for sharing this wonderful Sci-Fi Journeys digital reviewer copy with me in exchange for my honest thoughts.
Here comes Beautyland, and guess what? March Payne's hot take scored 271 likes. Let's read it. Move along, sci-fi readers, nothing to see here, is straight-up literary fiction. The aliens communicate via fax machine hook is not a plot engine, it's an entry point to the human experience. A slightly aslant frame around one woman's relatively uneventful life, taking in the beauty and wonder and cruelty and sadness and absurdity of it all. Beautyland refers to a discount cosmetic supply store, but it could be an alternative moniker for Earth. Carl Sagan's line about a mote of dust refers to pale blue dot, a famous photograph taken in 1990 by the Voyager 1 space probe. In it, Earth appears as a tiny speck, 6 billion kilometers in the distance. The mental shift in perspective, a humbling, miraculous significance, induced in the viewer is startling. We follow the Earth life of Adina Giorno, who believes herself to be an alien reporting back to unseen superiors. It's a perspective shift that gives this novel an excuse to be relentlessly observational. Speaking of 15 years in New York, there's something wonky about this book's timeline, 1977 to 2020, give or take. I wish my brain didn't fixate on these things, but given the space alien theme, I thought maybe the inconsistencies were clues to some kind of plot twist. In the end, they were never explained, and I can only assume they're just errors. It's hard to articulate exactly why kept me reading late into the night. Its tone is in a similar vein to Rufy Thorpe, Vandella Vita, and Kevin Wilson, sort of quirky but grounded, and I would highly recommend it to fans of those authors. Is an engrossing, compelling, life-affirming read. 4.5 stars.
Time for Orbital. Let's see why Lark Bonobi's comment, with 1084 likes, stood out. What a puzzle of a book this was for me. If it had been exactly the same book and labeled creative non-fiction, I would have been bowled over amazed by it. Its lack of plot would have been no impediment, because life doesn't come with a plot. To have been aware, as I read, that I was reading the meditations and wanderings of a real person in space would have been captivating. But it's fiction. and I can't seem to give these fictional meditations, made by fictional people, the weight they deserve, without there also being a plot, or some kind of forward momentum, to give these fictional lives meaning. I'm not sure this is a defensible position to take, why the same words work as one thing, and not another. I'm reporting an actual subjective experience of reading this novel, and being very aware it fails for me as fiction, and as some other thing it would have soared.